but I had to wear it frontwards today, obviously in honor of the news that Victor Wembanyama was diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder late last week when Ethan was on vacation. And so, yeah, I had to wear the shirt frontwards in honor of him. But it's not just news about Wemby that we got over the past week, Ethan. It was also about Coach Pop, who has been an integral part of both of our lives, really. Even though we don't know him, growing up, he was a part of our childhood. So it was sad for us to hear the news that he will be out for the year. Um, I was thinking about that a little bit more today, Ethan, when I was at work. And for a second, I was like, maybe does that tie into Wemby being out? But then I was like, no, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it's probably more just with that, because if he was coming back next year, he would still want to get reps with De'Aaron and all that stuff. You know what I mean? And the rest of the team. And I'm not saying, I don't know for sure, but my gut feeling on the Pop situation there is just that we kind of had the news and the rumors that maybe he'd potentially be coming back in February. Like there were even some legit sources reporting that. So when I factor that in, and then now all of a sudden he's not returning and his future is listed as uncertain, to me, that kind of just, that's kind of telling in a sense. We don't know for sure, but with his age, with, just all that comes with being an NBA head coach, whether it's the pressure level as well as just the traveling, um, there's a lot of things that at some point, like you're just going to be too old. And I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just like everybody gets to that point, you know? So maybe they ended up realizing that, but again, we'll have to wait. Maybe it's just he's out for the season and then they announce he's coming back next year. I don't think that's going to be the case, but with the Spurs, you just never know anything for certain. So those are kind of my thoughts there on Gregg Popovich and Victor being out for the season. What was your reaction and what were your thoughts on both of these pieces of news?
Well, my immediate reaction to Wemby was just like, oh man, I hope it's not something that's going to be, a recurring issue for him, like something similar to Chris Bosh, where it forced him to retire early. All reports point toward that not being the case, which is fantastic. Obviously, we don't know that much about his condition and all that it entails, but right now it looks like it's just going to be he's out for the rest of the year and he'll be back for game one of next season, which is honestly great. Because it puts the season into perspective. It makes it a lot more clear, Jude, I think, for the front office and for the team as far as what the goal is for the rest of the year. And to me, the
Mm-hmm.
goal becomes integrate De'Aaron Fox, but lose a lot of games and try and get as high of a lottery pick as possible. So there's no more gray area. There's no more,
Yeah.
oh, we should compete or oh, we shouldn't. It's okay. Let's just tank it for the rest of the year
Yeah.
and try and get a high lottery pick. And so in that sense, I guess that's the only silver lining to the situation. Prayers for Wemby. Hopefully, it's a quick turnaround as far as his recovery, and he's not put back, in terms of his own personal timeline for growth and improvement as a basketball player. And then the Pop thing, I pretty much figured he wasn't coming back for this, to be honest, for this season. We talked about it like a while ago, as far as like what we thought would happen with him.
Uh-huh.
And I think my prediction at that time was he'll probably come back for one game this year. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that still hangs true, but for next year, I think he'll come back for like one game, and it might even just be like more of a ceremonial head coaching of one game, more so than an actual head coaching of a game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we just, as a fan base, deserve one last chance to say goodbye. Not as a human being, obviously. Hopefully, he lives for a few more years, but as a head coach, somebody that's been so monumental not only
Mm-hmm.
to the organization and to the city, but like you said, to us growing up, almost like a surrogate father, not
Yeah.
father, grandfather,
Right.
um, and life coach in a way. So hopefully he can come back for one game next year, and we can officially say goodbye and close that chapter and thank him for all that he's done for the organization. And then with Wemby and De'Aaron Fox, and hopefully a top 10 pick maybe in this upcoming draft, we can really start competing in the 25-26 season, Jude.
You know, Ethan, kind of what you wrapped everything up with there, it made me think of something. And, as much as we praise Pop, we love Pop, in our eyes, he's the best coach ever.
Right.
The GOAT, right? Um, if he does go at this time, it is kind of a fitting time. You know what I mean? just in the sense that this really truly is kind of the step into the next era of the
Yeah.
Spurs, like next season. If this is it and he retires after this season and we have a new head coach going into next season, which I feel like that's that's probably going to happen. Again, we don't know for sure, so that's why I want to say that. But it really seems like it's going that way. Um, like I said, that's kind of it's kind of perfect timing in a sense, as much as you never want to let Pop go and you never want anybody to have a stroke. And eventually they were going to have to go 100%.
Mhm.
Um, that's not what I meant there, but um, again, we'll just going into next season after the draft picks and everything like that, it seems like the roster is going to be very much, kind of we know the goal like for sure is going to be winning. Like this year the goal was winning, but it wasn't, really trying to make the playoffs. It was trying to make the play in and just get in there, get some experience and show some growth. You know what I mean? Next season it's going to be full on, like winning time again. Um, and yeah, so that's the perfect time for kind of that new era of the Spurs to be ushered in,
Mhm.
with a new head coach at the helm as well. And there were some other things that I was going to get to there, but this conversation kind of drew me more into this. And I wanted to ask you about this. I didn't have this written down pre-stream, but it just kind of came into my mind. Do you think if Greg Popovich retires, if we've seen Greg Popovich coach his last game and next season, like you said, we're going to have, just like we had Tony Parker and Tim Duncan and Manu's night, we'll have a night for Pop, where, and the other thing we got to remember about Pop is Pop's still going to be here. He's still going to be the president of the Spurs. So he's still going to have a front office role. So he's not completely gone. Um, Remind me where I was at. I know I was talking about Pop. I'm sorry. In
I
this
I'm
ceremony.
I'm honestly not sure.
Thank
I'm
you.
not sure where that was leading into.
Okay, I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Um, I know I was talking about Pop Man
Mhm.
and everything like that, but obviously, I'm losing my train of thought there. Um, this is what it was, Ethan. This was the question that I was getting to. Is Mitch Johnson the head coach next season?
Ah, I think these next 20 something games are really gonna be an audition for him. He hasn't made it an easy choice to bring him back because of the difficulty. Like when Wemby was
Yeah,
playing, we were still trying to compete and get into the playoffs, and we were losing a lot of close games. And he's obviously a young guy. I think that the rest of the season will really tell whether or not he's the guy for us to bring back. And it also depends on who's available in free agency in terms of other head coaches in the league. Because I wouldn't mind bringing in a guy
yeah,
more well seasoned with a steady hand, right? I mean, I know he's under contract, but like a Bud, if somebody like him were available or a Quinn Snyder to bring in, I think you have to make that decision because as much as I love Mitch, he hasn't shown me that he's like the next guy up, like the head coach for OKC, who's also
mhm,
very young, but like you could tell, like this guy's
yeah,
he's a savant. And then you can even say the same for Will Hardy a little bit. I know he struggled, but his team, his roster is not where it should be. But when he had a competitive team, he was obviously a very good coach as well. Um, I think it just depends on who else is available, to be honest with you.
yeah. Me personally, I will say that I think my personal opinion also lines up what I think with is what is going to happen. I totally butchered the wording there.
No, I know what you're saying.
I think that Mitch Johnson will. I mean, maybe he could go somewhere else, but I think most likely it will be somebody different than Mitch Johnson, and Mitch Johnson will just return to his assistant coach role because I think that was kind of the plan anyway.
Right.
Um, and if things would have just went, perfect, maybe if Wemby doesn't have deep vein thrombosis and everything kind of goes as to plan as what we thought would kind of happen after the De'Aaron Fox trade, and we were playing Charles Bassey, so maybe if and obviously Charles is a whole nother discussion that we'll get into later with him getting hurt last night. But maybe if he wasn't hurt, he would have been playing off the bench. And if that's
Mm.
the case, maybe the bench rotation looks a lot better, with Jeremy not having to play the backup center, which we have seen kind of in the past 3 games post All-Star break. So, anyways, I say all that to say that maybe the plan was to give Mitch Johnson a legitimate look, with Coach Pop's stroke, but all of the circumstances just kind of muddied things up to where it's not really I guess you could say, an accurate eval, but I think there's also definitely things to criticize. But then that brings us into the conversation of the soft tank, because it's like if he's getting told to do certain things, then he's just following orders. That's not really him. That's not his philosophy as a head coach. You know what I mean? Um, so again, with all of that being said, because of all of just the muddiness of the Mitch Johnson tenure, I'd rather just go get somebody else that's a little bit more proven. I'd love to have Mitch back as an assistant.
I know I'm contradicting myself here when I said I wanted somebody more proven, like you said, like, with a steady hand. But what happened to the Manu Ginobili rumors of like he was the next man up that we were slowly grooming in the background? Like, is that still a plausible thing to think about, Jude? Even though he has zero head coaching experience,
Well, I guess Tim Duncan coached a game, but he was an assistant coach for the whole season, technically. What I would say to answer your Manu point is I know he's a coach like in the practice facility, but I just think it's unlikely.
he probably just loves his life how it is. And I
Yeah.
see some people in the comments bringing up guys like Tiago Splitter, who has been an assistant in other franchises, and maybe he's somebody we bring in. I don't know about as a head coach. I still think, even though I just contradicted myself, I still think I'd rather have somebody with head coaching experience. Shoot,
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's hard to say you just want to go poach a coach from another team because that's just so circumstantial. But I do think that the Spurs are an attractive destination.
for sure.
One of the most attractive destinations as of right now, you could argue. So I think maybe it could be a sitting head coach somewhere else. Um, maybe it's somebody like Monty Williams. I know that that went horribly in Phoenix, but he is somebody who lives in San Antonio and has head coaching experience and has previous experience with the Spurs. Maybe we just promote Brett Brown. I mean, I could sit here and we could talk about this all day, but I think the Spurs are just the most unpredictable thing to do here.
Yeah,
What I will say and what I do think is going to happen, I think we will go get an established head coach, and that's what I would like us to do as well. Maybe I'm wrong on what we will do, but that's what I think we're going to do, and that's what I'd like us to
I would agree. But I think your first point is
do.
the most valid, which is nobody has any idea what the Spurs front office is going to do. Let's be honest.
That is a point for sure. I want to give a shout out to Cowboy Tanaka. I brought this up earlier, but he knew where I was going with it. He said you wanted to ask about the new head coach. So
Mm.
appreciate you, Cowboy, because that's actually like a legitimate question, after the pop news. So, anyways, with that being said, Ethan, any final thoughts on Pop being out for the season and Wemby being out for the season?
The spotlight is now on Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, De'Aaron Fox, and all these other guys, right? People are clamoring for a trade. Well, now is the time to prove that you're not the guy to be moved.